Tonight's program is the Knauss Homestead and the Emmaus Remembrance Garden, presented by Maggie Fischer and Mike Waddell. Maggie Fischer grew up in Macungie and Emmaus, graduating from Emmaus High School before going to the Savannah College of Art and Design and beginning a long career in creative direction and travel industry marketing before returning to the Lehigh Valley in 2020. She shortly thereafter joined the Knauss Homestead Preservation Society as a descendant of Heinrich Knauss and has spent the last several years restoring the homestead and growing its presence in the Lehigh Valley as a landmark historic site for events and education. She currently lives in Bethlehem with her husband Jarrett and children Mara and Jack. Mike Waddell and his family moved to Emmaus in 1985 when he was working as an assistant principal at Emmaus High School. In the past 40 years, we've all come to know Mike for his community work in the 2009 celebration, 8 years on Borough Council, as a member of the Emmaus Arts Commission, along with many other volunteer positions. Tonight, Mike will talk to us about his involvement in and the creation and ongoing development of the Emmaus Remembrance Garden. We welcome Maggie and Mike tonight as our speakers.
Well, thank you, Emmaus Historical Society, for having me tonight. I'm very, very happy to be here on behalf of the Knauss Homestead Preservation Society. So today I could talk for a week about this. But what I was going to do tonight is really just go over the very early history of the Knauss Homestead, who built it, who lived in it throughout different periods in history, and just some of the unique features of the home, where the Knauss family came from, and why they are such a huge part of our shared history. So again, I'll go over the builders, the house, how the homestead was saved, which was probably by many of you that are in this room today, who lived there, what we've kind of done in the recent past, what we're going to do in 2025, and what we're really hoping to be able to do in 2025 and beyond. Is there anyone here who has never been to the homestead or gone through the house or the barn? Okay, good, great. All right, so the house itself was built by Sebastian Heinrich, my 7 times great-grandfather, and his wife Anna Catherine Transu. They came from Dudelsheim, Germany, which is kind of right smack dab in the middle of Germany, back in 1723, seeking religious freedom like most of the early Pennsylvania German settlers were. He was a wheelwright by trade, working closely with Henry Antes. So if you've ever been to the Antes homestead, Henry Antes was a very close associate of George Washington, which we always thought was a really cool piece of history attached to the Knauss family. And they lived there and learned their trade before they kind of made the trek north up 309 from Montgomery County. If you're wondering where I managed to snag portraits of Sebastian, these are actually AI interpretations of what Sebastian would have looked like. I had an AI bot read They Came to Emmaus by Preston Barba, and it came up with what it thinks the Knauss family may have looked like. So a little bit of futuristic photography in our presentation. Next slide. Okay, so like I said, they came over from Dudelsheim, Germany, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting when I was looking at photos of the church in Dudelsheim is the cupola looks exactly like the one at the Moravian church here. So I thought that was kind of a neat similarity between both the way the cities were laid out and how they designed the church with the tall arched windows and the 8-sided cupola at the top. They're actually very, very similar. So the first kind of iteration of the house itself, we think, was built sometime much, much earlier in the 1740s. But the house as it stands today was actually built by Heinrich for his father, Sebastian. Unfortunately, when the house was built, Sebastian only lived for about another year after that. So we kind of consider Heinrich and his wife, Anna Maria, to be the first kind of full-time residents of the homestead as it is today. And that was Anna Maria Ehrenhardt of 1803 house fame. And that was really kind of the first marriage that tied both the Knauss and the Ehrenhardt families together. So we always thought that just kind of formed an extra special bond between the Knauss homestead and the 1803 house. Next slide. Now, if you've ever been to the Knauss homestead, and if you've ever had the good fortune to go down in the basement where I keep all my event stuff, you can actually see the original log cabin walls from that smaller cabin that we think was built sometime in the early 1740s. If you look into our actual cellar, you can see the original footprint. Our basement is actually only open for about 40% of the basement that supports the whole house. The rest of it, you can see the original log cabin foundation down there. So next time you come to one of our events or to the house and you want to see it, just tap me on the shoulder and I'll show you. It's one of the coolest things about the house, and not very many people actually get to see it. So as the family grew and the house kind of took shape the way that we know it today in 1777, there were 2 sets of winder stairs that were added to reach the 2nd floor and the attic areas. And the Knauss homestead is actually one of very, very few continental plan colonial homes, not only left in Pennsylvania, but left in the country. And I'll tell you a side story. One day I was over at the homestead cleaning up after an event, and a man and his dog kind of came out of the woods and approached me and asked me if I knew anything about the house, and I said a little bit. And he said, you know, I'm actually over here from Cambridge. I am a professor of timber studies over there, and I've been dying to get into this house. This is one of the very few original continental plan houses I've come across in Pennsylvania. So it sounded like a believable story. So I let him into the house, and he about lost his mind just looking at some of the timber framing in there. He's the head of the Timber Framers Guild, which is like an international society that goes around and uses all kinds of methods of dating to date timbers back and kind of age some of these houses. And he saw some of the hinges on our doors. He went up in the attic and looked at a lot of the original timbers that built the house, and you know, he was really blown away and really kind of hoped that everyone here appreciates and knows what an amazing example of early colonial architecture the house really is. So really the continental plan style is kind of a 3-room layout. It has a very large, long kitchen built around a central hearth. You don't see a fireplace up against the outside of the house like you would in a later Victorian house. And there was always one bedroom on the first floor closest to the hearth, and that would be for, you know, older parents or anybody that was infirmed in any way, usually pregnant mothers that needed to be closer to the kitchen or closer to the stove. And then the upper level really housed the bedrooms for the parents, for anybody that was able-bodied enough to take those treacherous stairs. And they utilized a lot of trundle beds, which we've gotten a few period trundle beds into the house over the past year or two, so they're really, really cool to look at if you want to see examples of early trundle beds. We've got plenty. Does anybody have any questions up until this point? I'm going to go through kind of who the different iterations of the Knauss family were throughout the different periods. The first one being, again, the original inhabitants, which were Heinrich and Anna Maria Ehrenhardt. And they had Sebastian's widow, Anna Catherine Transu, that lived in that lower bedroom. And then they had a total of 14 children in that house at one time. They had one child, Susanna, who died in infancy, but the rest of the siblings all lived pretty much into old age. Magdalene Knauss Dahl was actually my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. Yeah, they had pretty good balance of girls versus boys, but even in the house today, I just cannot imagine how they had that many children in the house. And again, so this is what AI imagined the family must have looked like. Throughout the book, they describe both Heinrich and Sebastian as being of modest of coming up with a portrait. So after Heinrich passed, the house went to his son Jacob and his wife Anna Maria Toole. Next slide. They didn't have nearly as many children. They only had 4. We actually do have an original copy of Jacob Knauss's will, which gave a really incredible inventory of what was in the house when it passed between Heinrich and Jacob. So this kind of serves as our guide as to how to furnish the house and really what tools he had, and even the belongings of his children. That document, again, we have a copy over at the Homestead if you're ever interested in taking a look. After Jacob passed, it went to his eldest son, Heinrich, and Mary Anna Christ. They also had 4 children, and at this time, this is when Hermann Knauss was born. He was actually the last owner of the Knauss homestead before it passed to his wife. So he was really the last Knauss to have the house, and we think that this photo was taken just around that time, probably like the late 1870s, early 1880s, and that is more than likely Heinrich, Mariana, and their 4 children in the picture. And then the final members of the Knauss family to live in the house were Hermann and Mary Ellen Adrian. Now Hermann, as part of Heinrich's will, when he gave the house to Hermann, there was an entire section of his will that talked about his disabled sister Caroline. And Caroline lived in that first floor bedroom. And the will is quite unique. It goes on and on about how smart his sister is, and whatever she says goes. And if she wants to go upstairs, you let her go upstairs. If she wants to take the horse, you let her take the horse. So I'm not sure what Caroline's deal was, but she kind of had full authority and reign over that house. But she seemed to be a really incredibly nice person and a creative person as well. When I was doing research through the Morning Call and the Allentown Democrat, there were a lot of stories about her and all the amazing art she did and sold throughout Emmaus. Their description of her being severely crippled and disabled turned out to be a bad ankle, so she seemed to get around town just fine. But there's some really interesting stories about her that we have at the Homestead, where she would kind of hang out with neighborhood kids and play ball with them, and she seemed to be a really, really interesting character in the Knauss history. And then once Hermann passed, the house went to his wife, Mary. And Mary was apparently very, very well known in Emmaus for having her Easter egg hunts and just being someone who opened up the Knauss homestead to all the kids in Emmaus, and was really somebody who was very generous with her time and generous with her talents. And she's kind of an inspiration for us at the Knauss Homestead now in the way that we do our events. We do a lot of activities for kids, and we really try to focus on art and music and all the creative things that the Knauss family was so focused on throughout the years. Many of the more prominent members of the Knauss family were musicians. They played band with the church. They were very, very focused on art and music and making sure that that was important throughout everyone's education in the family. So Mary Ellen Adrian was the last Knauss to live in the house, and when she passed away in 1932, it was purchased by the Marx family of Emmaus. They had a business on the Triangle, and they used the Knauss homestead as a weekend kind of hunting lodge and a faraway vacation place, all the way down there in Salisbury Township. And kind of, from what I understand, Mrs. Marx was not a huge fan of the rustic decor or the nature of the homestead being more of a hunting cabin. So unfortunately, at that point, the Knauss homestead kind of started a period of neglect. And over the next several decades, the house fell into pretty severe disrepair. And then in the 80s and early 90s, a group of local descendants and really preservation-minded historians and just citizens of Emmaus took it upon themselves to make the restoration and the preservation of the homestead a priority. And I know some of you are in this room, so thank you very, very much for that. And that began the formation of the Knauss Homestead Preservation Society. They've done a lot over the past 25 years to keep the Knauss homestead relevant. I know when John Schmoyer was president, he did a lot of renovations to the house. Unfortunately, the barn kind of, didn't have a whole lot done except some asbestos shingles put on, which we promptly removed. But this is just kind of a short list of some of the things that we've done at the homestead in the past few years to make the barn a closer representation of how we felt it was back at the time when it was a working farm. We really wanted it to be a more integral part of the house so that people could use it safely, have events there, have parties there, and really enjoy the barn as a center of creativity and art and music. So this is just, again, a short list of a lot of what we've done to make the barn a great place to hang out. As far as the house itself, we've done a lot of painting, wall repair. There is a working bathroom in the house. We've refinished the floors. The entire hearth was restored and the chimney stack restored so that we are able to use it safely during events. We raised the ground out in the tree grove because there were so many dangerous tree roots and people were kind of afraid they were going to trip and fall. So we planted grass, and now it's a really nice place to walk and set up shop for events. And then we've put, over the past year or so, a lot of native plantings just around the homestead and the barn to attract pollinators and make it more of a natural looking garden. So looking ahead, some of the things that we are looking to do in 2025, we're going to replace the floor on the first level of the barn just to reinforce it and make it more safe for visitors. We're going to install lighting throughout, upgrade the electrical system, and replace the interior staircase. It turns out if you remove a staircase, you have to ask permission to put it back. So we're going to have to figure out a way to get that staircase back in there. So really, our vision is to make the homestead a landmark historic venue for Emmaus, for the Lehigh Valley, to really bring a closer tie with the community, with the 1803 house, shelter house, God's Acre, the Historical Society. We really want it to be one of many stops in Emmaus for people to come and experience early American history and see just how amazing these assets are. I've lived in many cities in the United States and worked for lots of different companies, and there is absolutely no place I've ever lived that had places like this in town. So I'm hoping that this will help everyone really appreciate how incredible these things are, and they're irreplaceable. So our next big event at the Homestead is going to be the Peach Festival, which will be July 26th from noon to 4. We expect it to be a really fun day full of activities, lots of artists, crafters, food vendors, and just a really good time. If you've not been to one of our events, they're just a really fun way to connect with the community, and it's amazing to see people who have grown up in Emmaus and lived around here their whole lives who've never been to the Homestead. And the most common thing we hear is, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea this was here." So if you can, please come out. And then of course, like everyone else, we definitely need volunteers. We have a couple of open board positions. We're trying to really reinforce and make sure Founders Day doesn't go away. The Peach Festival, again, is a lot of fun. We do old-fashioned Christmas and candlelight tours, and then we do really fun tours with the local elementary schools. So we do, if you're interested in volunteering, we would love to have you come out and help us out with some of these events. And that is it. Of course, we would love to have everyone in this room as a member of the Knauss Homestead Preservation Society if you're not already. You can scan that QR code up there with your phone to join. If not, you can grab me after the meeting and I'd be happy to guide you to where to go. But again, our goal is to really grow the volunteer force and really just the community priority of preserving and protecting the homestead. And that's it. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, first of all, good evening. I'm glad everyone's here on a rainy Wednesday evening. How many of you know where the Remembrance Garden is? That's a good start. How many of you have been to the Remembrance Garden? A few less. How many of you have a brick in the Remembrance Garden? Okay, so I have a lot of making up here to do to have you get bricks in the Remembrance Garden, and I hope after this presentation this evening you have a better sense of who we are and what we do. And I think that what Maggie did and talking about the Knauss Homestead is a really good segue into what we do at the Remembrance Garden, because it's for remembering. And Roger Whitcomb, Dr. Roger Whitcomb is sitting back here. Roger, raise your hand. Roger is Professor Emeritus from Kutztown University a few years ago, and Roger is one of the founding members of the Emmaus Remembrance Garden. He was there at the beginning, and I really appreciate that he's here this evening. And one of the longer discussions that we had was what to call this. And is it a memorial garden? Is it whatever? We finally came up with Remembrance Garden, which is the perfect name for it, particularly compared to the Knauss Homestead. And if you know where it is, it's literally next door to the Knauss Homestead. And it's all about remembering. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through these slides. And there is a story here, and it's a happy ending. Now, people have asked me over the years, how did this start? God bless you. And I say, it's because my parents divorced. You think, well, that's not a good way to lead into it. Well, as it happened, my parents divorced. My father and his new wife moved out to Hawthorne, Nevada, which is a godforsaken place between Hawthorne, Nevada and Reno, Nevada. But it's also one of the largest armament storage facilities in the world for the Army and Navy. And now there's only about 3,000 people there out in the middle of the desert. So Linda and I went to visit one time in the 80s, and now this is in the desert. We drove by this library, and I got out and took some pictures, and you can see my red arrow coming down there to a name placard at the bottom of those roses. And in this little town, in this garden, there were 800 roses. Took a picture. Eventually, this was with film, not digital. Threw them in an envelope. And in 2000, Roger and I were in the visioning committee meeting in the borough ran to find, well, what's working well here in the community? What else can we do? And over the course of a couple of years, I threw those pictures out, actually early on, threw the pictures out on the table, and people liked the idea. I thought, remembering the good people, good times in our community is something special. So we got a foundation together, and Roger Whitcomb, by the way, is what you call a rainmaker. This guy can walk into a room and just, I don't know what it is, but they just give him money. we took this drawing to Air Products, and he and Tom Gettings and myself sat down, and we walked out with $15,000. And the agreement was we weren't going to break ground until we had at least $50,000. Well, it was $100,000. We needed 100. We had to get at least 50 in either cash or in-kind services. Now I marked over here on the side, but over here, just the orientation. This is the Cintas parking lot here. The Knauss Homestead is over on this side of it. Deborah Lerman of the Wildlands Conservancy actually drew this for us, and we just took this around and took it to people, and I guess they believed us, and they gave us the money to get it started. And it basically looks like this now. Here's the pergola in the center, and this walkway number 1 and walkway number 2, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. I'm a process guy. I like to see how things are made. So this is, over here is the Cintas parking lot. This is how you make put a lot of bricks together and flagstone, build a pergola, and eventually you have this. And then you have a dedication. In July of 2004, you recognize a few of these people. Brent Peters of the East Penn Bank, They gave us some money. Waddell, they gave us, I believe, $10,000. She has a nice little plaque right in the middle of the pergola. And this is our current board at this time. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, which I believe the Knauss Homestead is as well, right, Maggie?
Yeah.
So feel free to donate to either or both organizations at any time. So here's what I want to do this evening. When we started this, and if you remember what the pergola looked like and those walkways, we thought it's going to be a lot of family and people putting bricks in and engraved bricks and so on, and mostly family and friends up here. And then over the first slide, remember, started 2020, the dedication was 2004. It actually started in 2000, the Vision Committee. We're into this for 25 years now. We were all a lot younger 25 years ago, I gotta tell you. It's been quite a while. And the evolution of this, that we now have these walkways, including the one for the Knauss Homestead Heritage Alliance. And what I'm gonna do is very quickly go through what it looks like for those walkways and the people involved. Now, the one thing I want you to remember, we have over 900 engraved bricks now at the Remembrance Garden. Think of that, 900 over the last really 20, 25 years, which is really pretty amazing. So every brick has a story. Now, when you see some of these bricks and you see the names on them and the activities and so on, I want you to remember that every time we put a brick in, there's a story behind that. And there's a reason why someone went to our website to purchase that brick, to put it in to remember someone or an event or whatever it might be. All right, so here's somebody you might know. Our first walkway with the family and friends, and you can see many of them are for people who are deceased. It's actually fun to put bricks in for people who are alive. They appreciate it so much more, so that does happen, and I'll show you some of those. So again, these are for grandparents or parents or special events. Here's a group of women from high school. I think they were the 49 plus 1 or something. I forget. They were all in the same class except one, and they put bricks in for each other. We have Emmaus High School bricks, and these are interesting because what we found over the last few years is as classes have their reunions, they'll buy one or maybe more than one brick. How many different Hornet E's are there? Do you know how many different Hornets? Come on, you lived here a long time, you went to Emmaus High School. There's 3. Who would have guessed 3? All right, so here's one Hornet. Here's another Hornet. And I think that, I don't know if that's the same one or not. But trust me, there's 3. So whenever we order a brick, or if you order a brick with a Hornet on, make sure you order either Hornet 1, 2, or 3. You gotta get the right one. Or believe me, somebody's gonna tell you about it. I've seen that. Businesses have put some bricks in, different banks. Bill Wall, if you know Bill Wall, and I don't think he'd mind me saying this, of Valley Builders. I knew Bill when he was at Emmaus High School. Bill and a few other people who are very successful business people now. I told them they were an IRS deduction for me for certain years because they were in my office so much. It was like having my own children. So Bill has paid the price. He has donated time and materials to help us out several times at the Remembrance Garden. Good guy. We have service clubs. Emmaus Rotary Club puts in bricks when we have passing of one of our members. There's way too many bricks in there. Kiwanis Clubs periodically does them for volunteers. The Emmaus Lioness Club is, who's here from the Lioness Club? I love when, it's almost like clockwork that they put in a brick every year for the president or somebody is something on a district committee. And a few years ago, they decided they had only had a certain number in. They said, we're going to put a brick in for every president who has ever served the Emmaus Lioness Club. So now they have their own big walkway right here by the central part of the pergola. Then we have the Lions Club, if you know Jack Mack, who unfortunately I know has passed away. Good guy. Garden Club, Masons, even the Emmaus Historical Society has past presidents in here, and I believe they had a brick for when they did the grand opening. So it's a way to remember what's going on in our community, a way to memorialize those special events. Jerry called me one day and said, Mike, I think we should have a walkway for community heroes and police officers and fire and EMTs and so on. So we did. We started with, and typically in our walkways, we have what I call a capstone brick that identifies what that walkway is. And then one of the first ones that went in was, and this is his daughter here, and of course you know Davy Faust. Then we have some Craig Deppie, one of the EMTs, Davy Faust brick. And this one I want to spend just an extra minute or two on. We started in 2004. In 2005, we thought, okay, what else is special here in Emmaus? Now, Roger is a Navy veteran, so at some point he said, well, what about our veterans here in our community? I said, yeah, we'll probably get a couple bricks, every year. Let's see what we can do. And now we have over 350 veterans bricks. And this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Remembrance Garden, we will have the 18th Veterans Bricks Installation Ceremony. And these pictures are the people, it's like a graduation picture. Whenever we conclude the ceremony, we get everybody together and we take a picture of everyone who was there. The Emmaus Honor Guard has been with us every year for it'll be 18 years. And these are just some of the pictures who have been honored with Veterans Bricks. Some of the families, that looks like the Waddell family there, actually. Extended family. Kristen Morgenstern, if you know her, and Scott Marshall. You might recognize these folks. I loved it when this gentleman came. I don't recall his name.
Bert Windsor.
There you go. In his uniform from World War II, and we had just put the bridge in that goes from the parking lot into the site now. Perfect for anyone who has a walker or has some ambulatory issues. But he was so proud to be there and to have this brick that his family purchased for him.
Oh, Rockstoffer.
It's Rockstoffer, right? And there's just families. Here's Jeannie again. We try, and this was, I don't remember which one this was. These were all bricks we put in, I don't know, maybe 30 one year for this particular ceremony. It's always the Saturday on Memorial Day weekend. These flags we always put out, we'll be doing that in the rain, probably on Friday. Some old guy giving Linda Bamer a brick. And this was interesting. First of all, veterans, raise your hands. Thank you for your service. When we talked to the Veterans Committee here in town, and we started to put these bricks together, I said, I didn't serve. My father, Linda's father served, my brother served. I said, should we have an area just for the Navy and for Army, Coast Guard, Marines, and so on? And he said, no. We put them wherever they're going to go. We all wore the uniform. It doesn't matter. We don't have to be, in particular areas. So when you go in there, you find over 350 veterans bricks. A third of the bricks are for veterans in there, which I think is such a credit to this community to recognize those who have served, who have worn the uniform. I don't see my friend Ruth here tonight. Where's Ruth tonight? This is Ernie's brick. And she made sure I didn't spell it E-R-N-I-E. It had to be E-R-N-E-Y. She made sure that it was spelled correctly. This is a gentleman who, what street was that? Linda, do you remember what street that sign was on? No, I don't. We drove through Emmaus, and on this fence, there was this sign that we saw for we used to have a speaker every year, and it said, "We're looking forward to you coming home, Daddy," or something. So I literally went up and knocked on their door, told her who I was, and is Daddy going to be home soon? You know, of course, I had explained who I was, and it happened he was coming home. He would be home for Memorial Day weekend, and his sister actually works at the post office, and I talked to her about it. He now works in the Pentagon, so it was just great having him there. And I remember it was really, really warm that day, and he had these fatigues on, like, oh my gosh, God bless you. So we also have, moving on to another walkway, this is the one actually, you can see the Knauss Homestead in the background there. This patio was done by an Eagle Scout, and we have a number of bricks. And there's actually more than one way to spell Knauss, K-N-O-U-S-C. I thought it was misspelled when they ordered the brick, but apparently there's probably even more ways than that. 2022. A bunch of them came in, and they just had a great time. And you know, we have Eagle Scouts. If you have an Eagle Scout in the family somewhere and you want to recognize them, we have a walkway right by the bridge for them. Churches have, we have churches walkway. Now this is an interesting one. This is, we've had probably 20 to 30 weddings at the Remembrance Garden, particularly when it came to when we had the pandemic and people couldn't get into churches and so on, and people discovered the Remembrance Garden. And they would bring their own clergy person, and then now we have a walkway with a whole bunch of wedding bricks. There's our mayor being an officiant, and sometimes they actually take the brick. I think that's a little much to put the brick in during your ceremony, but they wanted to do it, so God bless them. I want you to look at this. Gail and Bob Sherrick, who were just married last year, they've been together a long time, and I think Gail finally talked them in, it's time to get married, Bob, come on. So they came out, and here is their best dog, Caleb. Well, you can see everybody has their own way of setting these up, how they do it. Now, this is the sad part of it. Caleb passed away about 3 weeks after the wedding. So, what do? You get a brick for Caleb, of course. And now they have a brick right next to their wedding brick. They have Caleb's pet brick, which I just thought was just a good thing to do. We don't have many pet bricks. I think 2 actually. So if you have a pet that passed away or passed away in the future, certainly this is a good place to remember him. And notice we even have a little dog ball symbol. So people get involved, we have work parties there. Special thanks to these organizations who come out and help us throughout the year. There's more to do than you would think, and cleaning it up, planting flowers, pulling weeds, and so on. Gary Werbach, if you knew Gary from Gary's Tree Service, Gary's in the Rotary Club, they come out periodically. Some of our board members getting their hands dirty. And like I said, we're a 501c3, we're a nonprofit, and we exist by selling bricks. And what you do, we are at emmausremembers.org. You go up here to store. This is the commercial, by the way. Just you go up to store, and you just pick which kind of brick you want to do. They're very nicely laid out by sizes. Whether you want symbols or not, you just click on the one you want. You put in the text exactly the way you want it. Add to bag. It's just like going to Amazon. And that's how we do bricks. So again, it's been 25 years, and a lot of bricks, a lot of memories. And like I said, every brick has a story. If you have a story and you want it to be remembered, the one thing about these bricks that might be different than others is that bricks, they can be done 2 ways. They're clay, but the old-fashioned way was they were engraved, and then they put ink into those where it was engraved in the text. These are laser etched, and the bricks that you would see from 2004 and ones you would put in now, almost exactly the same. The laser etching, I don't know, caramelizes it or something. I'm sure there's some scientific term for it, but it lasts a very long time. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you.